So, good morning. I'm going to read a piece this morning of Vimala Thakar, a small booklet from 1968 that talks from her that she gave in San Francisco in 1968. So, relatively a long time ago, but still as pertinent as if they were spoken yesterday. So, here we go. It seems to me, she says, that life has a strange way of bringing people together. A few months ago, if somebody would have told me that I would be visiting California, I would not have believed it. And today, here we are, sitting together in a quiet room, not to hear some scholarly discourse, but to have a frank verbal communication about the fundamentals of life and living. Being a stranger to your land, let me have the liberty of mentioning that the speaker you have amidst you this afternoon is not a professional speaker, preacher, or teacher, not a sannyasi or a yogi or someone coming from the dark east with some authority. It is just an anonymous friend, born and brought up in the east, who has come to you in a friendly way. This is an unusual dimension as far as spiritual matters are concerned, both in the East and the West. There is a universal notion that someone with authority comes and gives a speech, expecting others to follow it. But what we are going to go through this afternoon is nothing of that kind. It's just going to be a simple, plain, friendly conversation, if you like that word. The thing that surprises a person like me, who travels across oceans and visits various countries, is the fact that though human beings have been inhabiting this globe for thousands of years, we're not able to live as a totally developed human person. Living is not existing. Living is not something fragmentary. Living is something which is done in its totality. A flower which is blossoming comes out, every petal of it. The beauty and the scent which were hidden in the bud comes out completely. A fruit, when it grows, ripens in its totality, not one part of it getting ripe and having the juice and the other part remaining unripe. The maturity of a fruit is in getting ripe in its totality. And the same with the flower. But we, the human beings, do not grow in our totality. We grow in parts, in fragments, biological growth, psychological growth, refining and cultivating the intellect, refining the mind, enriching memory, widening our horizons of information and knowledge. One wonders whether we realize that the biological growth and the psychological growth, however remarkable they have been in the bygone centuries, do not exhaust the totality of human consciousness. Man is so much more than just the biological and psychological structures. Up till now, Up till now, it has been a partial growth. We've been living fragmentarily, taking care of our bodies, taking care of our mind, the memory and the brain, creating a comfortable situation and surroundings for the self, the me, the ego, which is the center of the psychological structure. We are engrossed with it, but there still remains a dimension of consciousness and life which is not tapped, which is not explored and not appreciated. This is an observation of life. Had it not been the partial growth or fragmentary growth, man would not have been so unhappy individually and collectively as he is today. He has explored the five elements. He has conquered the oceans. He is conquering space. Due to the advance in science and technology, he has made space and time shrink before him. He has reduced the whole world to a small human family. Man has done all this, and yet today, man is not at peace with himself. You might travel across any country, the underdeveloped or the developed, the non-communist, free, democratic countries with their philosophical, cultural, and spiritual heritage. And you will find that man has not yet learned to live in peace with himself. He lives in conflict. He lives in tension. There are contradictions in his own person which he has not resolved. Collectively, how sad he is. You probably know much better than I. We have the Vietnams and the Biafras. We have the tensions in the Middle East, and we have the tensions between India and Pakistan. You have the racial tensions in the USA. You have the tension in Czechoslovakia. So this lack of capacity to live in peace with oneself, to live in relaxation, love, and friendship, indicates that we have not grown in totality. Perhaps we are carrying within us the hangover of the animal world. We have the human form, but the content of humanness, the essence of humanity, has not ripened in us. We are not mature human beings. We are half human beings and half human animals. That is how we are dwelling on this globe. It is not a very pleasant truth. I'm afraid truth is not very pleasant anyhow. It is sharp like a sword. The very observation or understanding of truth cuts through ignorance in our hearts. The cutting through is very painful. Let us understand this plain truth, that out of the human animal, a totally developed human being is yet to emerge. Religion is the field that deals with this total growth. The essence of religion is growing totally into a new dimension of life. Religion is not a mental activity. It's not an intellectual acquirement of theories, principles, formulas, or ideologies. It is not adapting new patterns of behavior. It seems to be growing into a new dimension of consciousness, which will give a new perspective of the world around and within us. This is what I would like to talk about with you, if I may. It is not necessary to indicate that the very word religion denotes reunion with the roots of life. It is not necessary to indicate that the very word religion denotes reunion with the roots of life. Where are the roots of life? Where is the main source of life? We have not found it in the mind or in the brain. We have explored the mind, the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. By the term we, I imply the whole of humanity. Where else can we explore them now? An inquiry into the source of life is the beginning of religion. It is not decorating intellect with theories or principles. It is not entertaining the emotion with new patterns of behavior. Religion is something very serious. It's something that goes very deep. It removes us from the superficial layers of existence and obliges us to go deeper within ourselves. It's an inward journey to find out the beyond within us. Religion is a personal discovery of the source of life. And this is what the world needs today. Human beings who will get back to the roots, live there, move from there, and act out of there is what we need. So that last line was human beings, that is what the world needs today. Human beings who will get back to the roots, who live there, who move from there, and act out of there. And this is what we need. We are an uprooted lot, scattered in different countries, battling against one another with the weapons of ideologies, theories, dogmas, traditions, and patterns of conditioning. Whether we do it in the name of the nation and the concept of national sovereignty, or we do it in the name of ideology, we are battling with one another on this level. And individually, we are battling against one another, fighting with one another on the basis of our likes and dislikes, preferences and prejudices, norms, standards, and values. We have codes of conduct for individual life, and we pitch one code of conduct against another. Or we fight in the name of the nation and say, my country before the other countries. It is obvious that this mind, this intellect, cluttered with all that stuff, is surely not the essence of human life. The essence lies somewhere else. One wonders how many people are willing to launch upon this inward journey to get to the roots within them and find out how that growth changes qualitatively the texture of relationships. How getting back to the roots and living and moving from there radically changes the quality of relationships which we have with one another. So a serious inquiry or an inward journey is the first step towards religion. This journey has to be taken alone. One cannot fall back upon the authority or the experience of another. One can learn about them, one can learn from them, but not fall back upon them. Religious inquiry is something very serious. I would like to emphasize it very much as one comes across people who treat it as an intellectual pastime or an emotional recreation. I have not visited your country, the USA, yet, but visiting the countries in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, one feels very sad that this basic inquiry of truth and reality is looked upon rather lightly on a superficial level of intellect and mind. If one is happy with the gratification of biological needs, if one is happy with the material comfort and economic security, then the flame of inquiry is not born in that heart. If one feels satisfied with theories about religion, with conforming to certain traditions and patterns, then the flame of inquiry does not burn bright in the heart. So one must find out, if one really wants to find out, what the truth is. If there is a demand, a need, an urge in the heart to find out what the truth is. It is an inward journey. We do not know what is going to happen. One may have to go through all sorts of experiences, which might be very strange. One may have to come face to face with ugliness lying within one's own self. All the images that one has created about oneself may be shattered completely. They may be broken down to pieces. This going beyond the senses and the mind needs courage. It needs tremendous courage. It needs a healthy body, a nervous system which is strong like steel, and a healthy mind which will not be frightened by the facts when they are discovered. I would like to emphasize that religious inquiry is not a play for children. It is something serious and dangerous, and yet, without the personal discovery of what truth is, life is meaningless. Without getting back to the roots of the source of life, living becomes a repetitive process, and one will be bored by that. People, I think, in this country have realized by now that having 3 meals a day, having a beautiful car and a house is not everything. Man does not live by that. Something important is missing. That sense of loneliness and the sense of something missing becomes more and more acute. So personal discovery of truth, though it may be full of dangers and risks, is the content of living. One who dares to discover the truth for himself lives. Those who do not dare discover truth personally and are satisfied with borrowed conclusions and experiences of other people go on living vicariously. It's second hand. There's no charm in it, no life in it. There is no grace. One has used the word discovery. You know, one has to use words. When one has to use words in relation to the intangible, invisible world, which exists beyond the mind, one realizes that no word satisfies. Every word is loaded with association. Every word is related to the known, to the world of duality. So both the speaker and the listeners will have to be very cautious about the use of words. Though I have used the words personal discovery of truth, it is not something that I am going to discover with the help of my mind and brain. The mistake man has made through centuries is to regard truth and reality as something to be acquired by the mind or the ego. Though we have used the term discovery, truth is not something to be acquired. Discovery of truth is not an act of the will. It is not a mental action. The mind and the brain, which have been trained and cultivated and refined through centuries, is not the instrument which will help us to discover the truth. So let us be clear that mind is not going to be of any help to us in this inward journey. It has its limited use. The content of our mind itself becomes the frontier which it cannot transcend. So on this journey, we cannot carry the mind with us. If we try to carry the mind with us and try to discover truth through it, we will land somewhere else. Mind is unequal to the task of leading us to the source, to the reality of the totality. All of you must be knowing that mind or brain is like a machine. It is an instrument at our disposal like the hands and the feet. It's a subtle, intangible thing. All your knowledge, information, and experience gets reduced to certain chemicals in the brain cells. When you eat food, it is converted into blood and tissues. Then glands and muscles are formed out of the food that you have eaten. In the same way, all the information, the knowledge, and experience get converted into chemicals which are stored in certain brain cells. When you come into contact with the so-called material world, the stimulus awakens certain reactions or responses. That response can be emotional or intellectual. This is how the brain works. It's a mechanical action, receiving the impression through the sense organs, the nervous system. This is how the mind works. Sometimes the sense organs are not working and the surface consciousness is quiet. And then the memories, the personal memories or the memories of family or the memories of the religious community of the race in which one happens to be born, come to the surface. And one gets visions and experiences. They are called transcendental experiences, but this is all on the level of the mind, the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious, but still on the level of the mind. So every mental action is a mechanical action. Mechanical action cannot lead us to the source of life. Cerebral activity is not the only activity we are capable of. This partial and fragmentary activity of the mind is only one part of us. If we allow the mind to be quiet and to cease to function, if we do not tempt it with a different field or area of action, but just let it be quiet and relax, then in the cessation of mental activity, silence comes to life. Silence, not as an experience of the mind, but as a dimension of consciousness. It is not a state of mind. A mind experiencing silence is not silent. Silence of the total mind is something marvelous. It is not an abstract, impersonal idea, nor an utopia, but something living and vibrating and breathing. If one has courage enough to let the mind alone, one can find out for oneself how the dimension of silence comes to life in the relaxation of the ego, the me, the I sense. Silence coming to life is the content of meditation. Silence is a dimension of consciousness. Silence as a dimension of consciousness is full of life and energy. You might ask me, Where does this energy come from? It doesn't come from anywhere. The energy which was scattered and dissipated through mental action comes back to its source when the mind is quiet. Energy which was divided in emotions, sentiments, feelings, thoughts, memories, and voluntary reflexes gathers itself unto itself. The whole day we are dividing energy, dissipating it and scattering it recklessly. Every movement of the mind implies spending energy. So when the mind relaxes, in the cessation of mental activity, energy comes back in its totality. This is life. This is energy. We do not know it today. We are not aware of our own nature. We are not aware of our own essence. We do not know how to live in totality. But silence, coming to life, releases tremendous energy, which is not different from intelligence. So, we do not know how to live in totality, but silence, coming to life, releases tremendous energy, which is not different from intelligence. So, I think till here for today. It's a beautiful cloudless sky in the Netherlands. So have a wonderful day. Bye for now.